Nigerians, please, there is this very important message I would like to share with each and every one of you. If you are a Nigerian, please listen to this very message carefully and understand why we are all suffering what we call recession in our country, Nigeria. Please pay attention to this and think and know why we are all suffering from the beginning, since 1987 till this very moment. Listen.
In 2007, a fountain pen touched paper and transferred ownership of the aluminium smelting company of Nigeria. The Nigerian government had spent $3.2 billion of public money building this massive industrial complex in Akwa Ibom State. But the contract signed that day did not sell the plant for $3 billion, it sold it for $250 million. So the buyer was a Russian company named Rusal, a multi-billion-dollar national asset, paid for by Nigerian taxpayers, was handed over at a 92% discount. Where did the remaining value go? It was wiped out by a single signature. When we talk about missing wealth in Nigeria, we usually look for money stolen from the treasury. We look for cash stuffed in suitcases or wired offshore. But the greatest wealth transfer in Nigerian history was not a bank robbery. It was a legal process. It was called privatization. You are watching Historic Capital. This is the investigation into the Nigerian fire sale. Before 1988, the Nigerian government owned everything. The state owned the telecommunications network. The state owned the power grid. The state owned the hotels, the cement factories, the fertilizer plants, and the steel mills. These assets were built using the oil booms of the 1970s. They belonged to the public. But in 1986, the economy crashed. The government adopted the Structural Adjustment Program. The new financial doctrine was simple. The government is a bad businessman. The state must sell its companies to private investors. The process formally started in 1988 under military ruler General Ibrahim Babangida. He signed a decree creating the Technical Committee on Privatization and Commercialization. He appointed a man named Shamsuddin Usman to lead it. Between 1989 and 1993, this committee quietly sold off about 88 government-owned companies. But these were just the appetizers. The real feast happened a decade later. In 1999, Nigeria returned to civilian rule. The military handed over a nation that was rich in physical assets but broke in cash. The new president, Olusegun Obasanjo, decided it was time to open the vault. To sell a country legally, you need a law. In 1999, the government passed the Public Enterprises, Privatization and Commercialization Act. This piece of paper accelerated the sale of the nation. It created two powerful institutions. First, it created the National Council on Privatization, NCP. This was the board of directors. They chose which assets to sell and who could buy them. The chairman of this council was the Vice President of Nigeria, Atiku Abubakar. Second, it created the Bureau of Public Enterprises, BPE. This was the execution arm. They prepared the documents, ran the auctions, and handed over the keys. The man appointed to run this agency was Nasir Elrufai. Together, these offices oversaw the largest transfer of state assets in African history. President Olusegun Obasanjo signed the final approvals. The stated goal was noble. They told the public, "We are moving Nigeria from inefficient state control to efficient private ownership. It will create jobs. It will lower prices." But forensic accounting requires us to ignore the press release and look at the receipt. Let's look at who bought the assets. Let's go to Port Harcourt. The Nigerian government built the Eleme Petrochemicals Company. It was a massive facility designed to process the byproducts of oil refining. It was deliberately allowed to decay. The government stopped funding its maintenance. It was declared unprofitable. Once the value dropped, the Privatization Council stepped in. They sold a majority stake to the Indorama Corporation. Instantly, the unprofitable plant became a multi-billion-dollar private cash cow. Next, let's look at the hospitality sector. The government owned the Transcorp Hilton in Abuja. It was the premier hotel in the capital, generating daily cash flow from foreign diplomats and politicians. The government transferred this prime real estate to a company called the Transnational Corporation of Nigeria, Transcorp. Who owned Transcorp? It was not a foreign hedge fund. it was a consortium of Nigerian elites, politically connected billionaires, and friends of the government. The people selling the public assets were sitting at the same dinner tables as the people buying them. Then, there was the telecommunications monopoly, NITEL, Nigerian Telecommunications Limited. NITEL owned the cables, the switches, and the infrastructure of the entire country. The government put NITEL up for sale, but the process was chaotic. Bidding consortia were formed, dissolved, and reformed. The government intentionally stalled the modernization of NITEL. While NITEL was being suffocated, the government auctioned GSM mobile licenses to private companies, MTN Group, Airtel Africa, and Globacom. The private telecoms exploded into multi-billion-dollar empires. NITEL was stripped for parts and died. The public asset was sacrificed so the private market could inherit its customers. The ultimate prize was the power sector. For decades, the power holding company of Nigeria, PHCN, controlled the electricity of 200 million people. The government argued that breaking up PHCN and selling it to private investors would end the blackouts. They unbundled the massive monopoly into smaller generation companies, Gencos, and distribution companies, Discos. Look at the Geregu power plant in Kogi State. A majority stake was sold to private investors. Across the country, power plants and distribution networks were handed over to consortia. But when investigators peeled back the corporate layers of these new power companies, they found something disturbing. Many of the companies that bought the power grid had no history of generating electricity. They were shell companies. They were special purpose vehicles, controlled by former generals, ex-governors, and political insiders. They did not buy the power grid to fix it. They bought the power grid to collect the tariffs. The privatization contracts guaranteed that the Nigerian government would cover their shortfalls. If they failed to supply power, the government paid them a subsidy. If they supplied power, they billed the citizens. They assumed zero risk. They captured 100% of the upside. Who pays the cost of this fire sale? You do. The promise of privatization was efficiency. The reality is extraction. When you buy a prepaid meter and pay triple the price for electricity, you are paying the dividend of the PHCN privatization. When you buy a plane ticket and the price is inflated because the aviation fuel has to be imported, you are paying the cost of the dead state refineries. The Nigerian worker paid to build these assets with his taxes in the 1970s and 1980s. Then the assets were sold to the elite at a discount. Now the worker pays the elite a daily fee just to use the asset he originally built. It is a double taxation. The state took the public wealth, transferred it to a few private hands, and gave the public the bill. This is why Nigeria has some of the richest billionaires in Africa, but the highest number of people living in extreme poverty. The wealth did not evaporate. It was transferred. When Nigerians talk about how national assets disappeared, the story is often told as if some invisible foreign hand took them away. We blame the IMF. We blame the World Bank. We blame the global markets. But the official records tell a different story. Look at the signatures on the contracts. Privatization in Nigeria was not carried out in secret meetings in Washington or London. It was carried out by Nigerian presidents. It was drafted by Nigerian ministers. It was approved by Nigerian privatization councils. It was executed by Nigerian regulatory agencies. The ink on the paper was Nigerian. They did not sell the country to strangers. They sold the country to themselves. This investigation proves that corruption in Nigeria is not a mistake. It is an economic model, but there is one final sector we have not uncovered. It is the ultimate prize, the asset that funds the entire machine. If you want us to open the dossier on the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, and the oil block allocations, make sure you are subscribed. We will show you exactly who owns the oil under your feet. Leave a comment below. Which privatized company do you think was the biggest loss to Nigeria? NITEL, PHCN, or the refineries? Let's read the records together. You are watching Historic Capital. Follow the money.
Ladies and gentlemen, when I saw this message, I became so weak and tired of this country generally. Do you see why this country will keep suffering, both the people and every other thing surrounding it? The country, Nigeria, has been privatized, and privatized means the country has been sold out. So my brother and my sisters, all of us wey we dey Nigeria dey hustle. My brother, we dey hustle for the government. Your hustle no go fit pay you anything. Even if you like top money on top of money, time shall come when you start complaining of all these things. Even me, like this, I dey think of traveling out of this country, because the country itself is not even favoring one anymore, because the rate at which the high currency and every other thing keeps increasing is very alarming. Okay, look at gas now. Gas now is over 2,100. Some filling stations sell 19. Are you getting me? In Abuja, some places sell 2,001, 1,008. Before you even see and sell, you go there you hard. Look at the cost of transportation from Lagos to Port Harcourt or Lagos to Abuja. If you don't have up to 200,000 naira now, you can't even make any plans of traveling within Nigeria. If you don't have up to 5 to 10 to 20 million naira, you can't even think of traveling out. So while you are even in Nigeria, you are suffering. Even when you are planning to go out, you even keep suffering self before you go. My dear, the country itself is no longer funny. So you've heard it, you've seen it. You understand? I just say make I play this thing for some of you, so that everybody will see it and know that we have already been sold out. No doubt, we've been sold. The only thing will remain now, make we go back to slavery, all those slavery. But God no go greet them for that one. One way or the other, we will survive it. But pray, just pray. May God bless you so that you can leave this country. Go outside, go where country wey good, where you go feel hustle well or make money well, where their currency is more valuable, their government is more favorable. Nigeria is no longer a favorable nation. The nation has been privatized. That is why you see people keep suffering in this country. May God help us. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching.